I didn't know why I was feeling so disengaged from the very dream that I helped create. I mean, it didn't make any sense. What I did think is, wait a second, if I'm the author of my life, then why am I feeling so disengaged from this important component of who I am? And then in the same moment, as I leaned back even further, I thought, wait a second, I don't even know who John Stix is. I mean, I all my identity was poured into my company, and my company's identity, along with my best friend, was ours. There was no separation. And then it really kicked me when I realized that, because then I thought, well, wait a second, if I don't know who I am, then how can the people that know me closest know how can they possibly love me?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of the None of Your Business podcast. Sean and Lacey here, just as we are each and every week. And oh my gosh, all of you listening, all of you watching are in for a super special treat today. We have a marvelous human being with us as our guest today. And, as I think about, all the things that we're prepping to dive into, I am recalling a lot of people that struggle in their business. I think that oftentimes, we run into in our business a lot of people who, and we often say they tick all the boxes, right? So they get all the coaching, they take instruction well,
They do all the
they do all the
things.
things. They're not skipping anything. They do everything, but for some reason, even though they're doing all of that, it doesn't work out, and it's a conundrum. I got to tell you, as a consultant, as a coach. These are things that keep you up at night. You're
Yep.
like, man, why would somebody, how can they do everything if why are they not getting
Moving
the results?
forward,
What's
right.
happening
What's
here?
going on?
Our guest today has a potential answer. I would say the answer, but I don't want to commit him into well, wait a minute, you're overcommitting
We'll see.
me.
We'll get there. Yeah.
His name is John Stix. He is an amazing businessman, entrepreneur. But today we're actually going to talk about some of the revelations that have come up in his life and have him share some of his life lessons with all of us here. Let's bring John in. John, welcome to the None of Your Business podcast.
Hey guys, super pleasure to be with you.
So we begin every podcast with the exact same question for every guest because, and especially in your case,
Yes.
if somebody knows, what you do, what you're doing currently, all of the things that you have going on in your life, oftentimes it's easy for somebody to look at you and say well, obviously, especially if they're not in your position. If maybe they were you many years ago, they look at you and they judge you saying, well, of course, everything that you're saying here on the podcast is easy for you to say. Look at your life. Look at where you are now. Look at where you've come from. And oftentimes, too, our minds play tricks on us. It's easy to convince ourselves that maybe you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth and you've been given all of these fortunate advantages that nobody else has, and that's why you are where you are now. And so we always ask all of our guests, tell us a little bit about your journey, some of the bumps, trials, tribulations, and lessons that you've learned. How do we end up talking to you? What makes you so special that you'd be a guest on the show?
I got to tell you, I feel really honored, first off, to be on your show. So thank you for that. Yeah, great question to start us off. I like to start by saying I was very blessed by being able to meet my best friend at a very early age, who ended up becoming my business partner. And, we didn't really have much at the beginning, that's for sure. We had very little. In fact, we tell a story of how we actually had one red blazer and one pair of dress shoes. So we couldn't even go to the same business meeting together. It was modest beginnings, but what we really had an abundance of is dreams. We were big dreamers, and so met my best friend at an early age. We just knew that we wanted to hang out more, so we weren't really putting a label on ourselves as being entrepreneurs at all. It was more about, we didn't want to go to work, we wanted to go to passion. That's really, to summarize, how we got started. And we got started in multiple different businesses. In fact, an early memory is having, of all things, a a paving company, like a sealing company, we'd be the ones coming to your door and knocking on it and saying, hey, for $20 we can seal your driveway. And it was a truck that barely worked, and it was an amazing adventure. But we tried about 9, 10, 11, 12 times, and none of them really worked. But we sure had a lot of fun doing it. And I'm born and raised in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada, and then finally in 1994. Here in Canada, deregulation happened in telecommunications, and the entire opening of a whole industry occurred. And really, we just said, hey, we're not in school for telecom. We don't understand communications, and we don't have any experience in the work environment with that. But why not us? And our dream was still the same. We just needed to find the right opportunity in industry, and we shifted our focus. And in one fell swoop, we decided to go for it again. And maybe to the chagrin of our parents at that time, we put everything aside and started to learn about what it meant to move forward in an opportunity in this new industry in Canada at the time.
Wow, and I love this part of your story where you said, you knew very on like you were big dreamers. And more importantly, you knew that you didn't want to go to work, you wanted to go to passion, right? And that really stuck out for me. And I know that you talk about this concept of discovering your who. And I want to dive more into this because for so long, people always have said, you remember the book, Start With Why. You have to start with your why. But I like this idea of discovering your who because I think that's such a foundational element for you to dive into and understand in order to propel yourself forward. So can you help us unpack discovering your who a little bit more?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'd like to give a little bit of the story leading up to that because it's definitely part of it. When we first hit our real win, there was the grand celebrations, and it was really out of the blue. We just had an idea within the structure of a business, and it really took off. And so with that, we had to hire people, and to this day, I remember thinking how many people were actually coming to apply that probably turned around because they found out they were driving into Crescent, that our office was our house. But those that joined us back in those days, we welcomed with open arms. And our company grew really fast in telecommunications in Canada. We were very disruptive with our products and services. And then for 10 years, we were doubling revenue. And we went from 2 people in a basement to 200 with international offices, what seemed to be overnight. And about 10 years into it, I started to notice that, in this great office that we had built and the very dream that we helped create, that really the materialization of many early dreams, there was infighting that was occurring inside in our business, and this great lunchroom that was built for collaboration. There wasn't seemingly collaboration as much anymore, and with myself, I was becoming more and more disengaged from the very dream that I helped create. It wasn't just to me a job. It was, much more important. I was with my best friend, and our family had joined us, and friends and community. And here I am one day, going towards HQ headquarters and getting on my car, walking to the office. And I remember putting my hand on the front door and on the handle, and I just I let go. And in that one moment, I turned around and went back into my car and reclined the seat and went, uh-oh. And I didn't know why I was feeling so disengaged from the very dream that I helped create. I mean, it didn't make any sense. What I did think is, wait a second, if I'm the author of my life, then why am I feeling so disengaged from this important component of who I am? And then in the same moment, as I leaned back even further, I thought, wait a second, I don't even know who John Stix is. I mean, all my identity was poured into my company, and my company's identity, along with my best friend, was ours. There was no separation. And then it really kicked me when I realized that, because then I thought, well, wait a second, if I don't know who I am, then how can the people that know me closest know how can they possibly love me? And so all this kind of came like a rush, and then I was, I had been asking for advice leading up to that, and people would say, hey, John, take a vacation. You ever take a vacation? It's stress, it's typical, it's business. And I remember it was great advice and everyone meant well, but I'd come home from that vacation and they'd say nothing would change. And they'd say, well, you took the wrong vacation. And what I realized in that moment is that we tend to search for everything outside of us. We tend to look for the answers that are outside of us. And people mean well, they give us great advice. And we need to listen to that advice, that wisdom. But in that moment, I just realized I needed to turn the arrow inward. And if I was going to really find the answers that I was seeking, they had to be inside me. And from that moment on, my life changed. I took a trip out west, and there's a sequence of events that occurred that permanently changed my life. And on the plane ride back, I thought to myself, wait a second, if, I remembered that I always loved people. As a kid, I used to dream about their happiness, and I thought that was kind of normal. And then I realized, wait, I'm not leading from that place. I'm not being that version of John. So I started saying, well, why am I not? And on the plane ride back, I decided that I was going to be. I was going to lead from my heart, not so much in my mind. And then what came from that was that, the team joined in, and they did such a great job, and they joined in terms of a new culture, and we created a new identity that was, really authentic to our business. And then we ended up winning the next year best HR brand in all of Canada for any size of company, and the government did a study on us. But for myself, I dove really deep into wanting to learn from the amazing leaders of our past. How did they do what they did? How did they accomplish what they accomplished? How did they bind people together to a common purpose to feel fulfilled and really, realize their potential? And what came from that was I birthed what now is Discover Who, and really it was a philosophy of us understanding that the answers we seek and realizing what we truly desire is already inside us. And if we take the time to just listen to what really matters to us, we become better husbands, wives, leaders, grandparents, you name it. And one of them was, I think I became certainly a much more authentic version of a leader of the business that I was blessed to be able to be a part of.
I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I agree, and I'm not putting words in your mouth. So I'm saying for me, I actually disagree with the idea that it starts with why.
Mm-hmm.
Um, your words would be it starts with who. Not saying that's what you're saying, but what I've always said is that people don't interact with you, or people don't do business with you because of your why. People do business with you because of what you stand for. That's what I say, what you stand for, which in a lot of ways, right, that's your internal projection of who you are, more so than why you're doing what you're doing. I mean, a lot of people have a lot of motives. Like, I might do business with somebody and they're trying to provide for their children's education because they never went to college, and they're very passionate about it. And that's why they give great service, and
Right.
that's why the business is great. But that's not why
Why you
I
doing
do it,
business
right?
with
Like,
them,
I
right?
like them because
Right.
of who they are, right? Who they are.
The essence of their being
Yes,
matters
the
more.
essence of their being.
Yes.
But so much to unpack here, John. I want to just roll it back a little bit, because I'm thinking of listeners that are like, wow, like the story that, kind of the kickoff of the story, you went to reach for the door and then you were like, had that moment. But I want to go back a little bit backwards from there. Can you share with us, even prior to that, now, obviously looking back, obviously too, not really being attuned to them as they were leading up, but what were some of the smaller symptoms that were happening that were leading to that point? Because I would love for our listeners not to have to get fully to that whole, like, I'm not going into work, I'm going back into my
But to be able
car.
to have a recognition of maybe I don't fully know who I am.
Yeah, how can we begin?
Right?
Let's
Yeah.
talk about some of the symptoms that someone might have, and they're like, maybe I should pay attention to this.
Yeah, great question. Thanks. When I'm doing my work with leaders, and I like to simplify things from my own growth and where I've come from. But a simple thing is, we should feel like we're jumping out of bed in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we're not engaged in looking forward to our day, then what's going on, right? And I learned early on that also that as we become more busy, and say that we have a business that's building and thriving, it creates a gravitational pull of opportunities. And if you're anything like me, be distracted by the next shiny thing. And, one of the symptoms is, are you constantly looking for something that, makes you feel engaged beyond what you've already created? And, great influence in my life was this mentor that I have. And he said to me once, I'll pass this along because great wisdom. He said, every distraction is an attraction. So we must ask ourselves, why are we attracted to it? And so I think that's a big symptom, like, are we defocusing ourselves because we're trying to find that excitement again? So that's something to look for. And then, are you, what is your measurement for success? How do you define it? I'll say success and prosperity. Do we ever take the time to really define it for ourselves? And so not Webster's dictionary or your best friend's definition, but do we actually sit down and take the time to say, this is my personal definition of prosperity, and this is my personal definition of success? And if we do that, then we can use that as a bit of a gauge and say, hey, is peace a part of my prosperity? Is equanimity there? Is joy there? Is freedom there? Am I able to do the things that I love? Am I doing them? And so I think we get so enveloped into the hamster wheel of producing more of what we've already done that we forget to realize, hey, we're creative, we're imaginative, when we're doing a lot of the things we want to do to have freedom, have peace, have joy, to be able to travel, to have an extra few moments with our kids. And if we're not having those, then that's certainly a big indicator that you might have fallen a bit too far into what you're doing.
I think those are great for any of our listeners out there, because I know people feel these things and they often wonder why. Why am I constantly searching? Why am I constantly looking for things to, like you said, reignite me or re-energize me or get me excited again, versus having that internal excitement that can be self-produced. But I want to fast forward now a little bit, because
Sure.
one of the things that you said is that you went and did this internal work and you
Yeah.
came back to a team of 200 people and were able to change and turn over the culture. And I know we have so many entrepreneurs and business owners listening right now that struggle with creating a culture in
With
their
three
team
people.
with three
A team of
people.
three.
So I'm curious, like, how were you able to do that? What kinds of things did you initiate or show them in order to kind of get them on board with this new version of you and where you're trying to take the company?
Yeah, thanks. I would say that just becoming more of who I am enabled me to get out of my own way, right?
Ah,
Like, we know what really matters. But again, we get into this hamster wheel, I'll use that word again, where we're so busy with our spreadsheets, so busy with formulating our next plans, that do you remember those times when you started your business with just your business partner, or maybe there's three of you, and culture was basically, sitting around a table and maybe having a coffee, or for us, a Guinness, it was after work having a Guinness and talking about, did we inch closer to the dream? Do you feel
right.
that again? I mean, we stopped doing that. And so really one of the big things that we got back to is we first re-engaged the leadership team and said, what are we doing, and and who are we, and what's driving wedges between us, and aren't we bound to the same dream anymore? Like, and what is that dream? At that time, I think we could easily have had 10 of us in an elevator and asked us, hey, what's the elevator pitch? The typical elevator pitch, and all 10 of us would have had a different answer. We had lost our, who we really are. So for us, it was about discovering that. So I took the leadership team, and we went off site, and we took the time to think, okay, what is our dream, and who is this company? And I know that sounds strange to say who the company is, but it actually is its own entity, legally, and we have a fiduciary duty, a stewardship of looking after it. And so it really is its own entity, but yet we need this separation from our identity, and we need to be able to look at it and say, who is this company? And so, we went through the process of really digging in and discovering our purpose that gets us bouncing out of bed in the morning. And then we thought, well, how are we going to make decisions that scale beyond what we are now? Well, we need the same language and we need the same behavior. So we created our own unique core values with specific definitions. So we knew exactly how we would make decisions, and that enabled an increased autonomy. And then from there, we created something that was unique to us that I call the I'm in mantra. And all that is we wanted to create an emotional bond, an internal brand. Like we don't cheer for the New Yorks or the San Franciscos or the Torontos. We cheer for the Yankees, the Giants, and the Blue Jays. And so I thought, what if we could create this kind of internal brand, this emotional bond that unites us all? And so we created that. And as we developed that, we became so unified, and we launched it internally to the whole company at the biggest event we've ever had. And I saw such amazing emotions. People were embracing each other, and you could see the laughter and even some tears. And we all just realigned, and the belief just ignited. And then from there, we did things that we felt like were proper to do. We really became good listeners. We really listened to our staff. I remember one time, two divisions just did amazing results. And so I said, hey, let's get them box seats at a hockey game. And I thought, this is amazing. Who wouldn't want that? I mean, we're Canadian, it's hockey.
Right. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Right? Box seats. And, it was that Saturday, and the Monday I went into work, I found that only 6 people went. And I was like, that makes me feel like I'm perturbed by that. And this was earlier on. And then I realized, it's like, hey, John, maybe they all don't like hockey, right? Maybe they couldn't get a babysitter. Maybe it was too far to drive. Right. And so we became really good listeners. And that gave us the ability as a leader to strategically invest based on our values and identity into what really mattered to our staff. And so we built gyms in our buildings. We inspired our staff to create yoga, and they became the mentors for other staff. Art classes, photography classes. We embraced our core values. It wasn't a poster or a ping pong table. We were living them. And we became a really unified tribe. And so, we did things that really, I think, is not rocket science. It's just, I call it a seed of care. Like if you care enough and you're willing to listen, your teammates will tell you what matters.
What I love, I know Sean has a question, but what I love about how you did this with the culture is you just applied the same concept that you did with yourself. You just turned the arrow around and
Right.
said, we have to look internally. What are we about internally in our business? And you worked from the inside out, which is exactly how you were able to, discover your own who. You did that with your company. So it's such a phenomenal story and so in alignment with your teachings. I love that.
I wanted to ask what he's doing to help other people to solve for this, and I'll let you ask that after, because I have a different question that comes to mind. And you mentioned earlier, like you're falling too deep into your business, right? Like you're losing yourself, and that's kind of one of those symptoms. But I know a lot of people. This is like when you said that, this is a big struggle, especially for entrepreneurs, listeners of our show. There's this thing, like it's this constant battle, this work-life balance. I mean, it's literally this thing that you're trying to chase that's impossible to achieve in a moment, right?
Right.
Like I needed to have balance in a 4-hour run or
Right.
a 24-hour run, or is it a 30-day run, or is it a year? Like what am I balancing exactly? And a lot of people have a lot of feelings, a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, because listen, when you're starting a business, you have to pour a lot into it. And I guess that's where that danger creeps in, because if you get out of balance and you're pouring into this business and you're growing overnight success that took 10 years, but you're having this exponential growth, it's hard to sometimes get yourself back out of that, because as soon as you have one accomplishment, you're on to the next one, you're on to the next one. Can you speak a little bit to the challenge of this elusive work-life balance and the feelings and emotions that arise as we're struggling to kind of chase that down?
Yeah, I think we don't feel worthy in a lot of ways. I don't think that we feel like we're worthy to achieve what we've achieved, and then all of a sudden we're there. And automatically we push the goalposts out, because like one day we're going to allow ourselves to feel joy. One day we're going to allow ourselves to feel peace. And one day we're going to allow ourselves to spend more time hugging our kids or our grandkids, or take that trip that we planned on doing, or heck that, how about just even go to the gym or find time to play a sport that you love or spend time with a friend. And I think we get so wrapped up into our business that our worthiness is based on the success of our business, but we're much more than that. And the more we fall into the spiral of just more of our business, the more we tend to lose ourselves. And so I don't really use for myself the term work-life balance. What I do is I think about why I'm doing what I'm doing. Like we don't take the time, I don't think, to ask ourselves, why am I doing what I'm doing? I like to use this analogy too. And if we come to a point in time where we got to select the direction that we're going to go in, we use our GPS, and then we go on autopilot, and the GPS takes care of navigation and where we're going, and we kind of lose control of the destiny, right? It's just gone on autopilot. But we're all successful. We're successful right now, and we can choose to feel that success. And the reason why I really don't gauge my own life in work-life balance, it's because I'm checking in with my heart. So what I'm doing is I'm basically saying, hey, do I want to go play tennis? Does it matter to me? Do I want to, after tennis, spend the time with my friend? And I prioritize what I want to do, what I truly desire, and I don't push it down to another day, to another week, to another month, to another year. And within that, what I've found is it's enabled me to be able to recognize my own triggers of when I've gone too far. And it's enabled me to grow personally, which then I can pour that growth back into the business. And, I fundamentally believe that we're not supposed to have our cup half full or full. That analogy where it's like, hey, the cup's half full, your cup's drained too much, get your cup back full. I believe we're to give from our overflow. And if we're taking care of ourselves, we can pour way more into our companies, our families, our endeavors, and what we long and want to do. And we can realize success right now. It doesn't have to be this magical time in the distant future.
I absolutely love those concepts. You said the word overflow, and that's my big thing. Everybody looked around because that's truly what I believe too, is that we oftentimes have been told that we have to fit everything in this cup. And first off, I mean, everybody may have a different size cup, but second off, why can't our cup be overflowing? Why can't we operate from a state of so much abundance and overflow that we have enough to give? And so I love these concepts, and obviously your journey and what you have gone through has truly impacted your ability to share your gifts with others. So tell us a little bit about what you are doing to help others through this process and how people can connect with you.
Yeah, thanks so much. I like I said earlier, I really just dove into growth and that wisdom from the people that have lived before us that know so much, right? Didn't have the tech that we have, but yet they were able to accomplish so much. And with that, I just started writing, and my friends would say, hey, they'd ask some questions, and it really started with no intention of writing a book or being out there, or look at this, I'm blessed to be on a podcast such as yours. But over time, what happened was I really felt like I was being called or pulled towards something that mattered to me deep in my heart. And so over time, it became a brand called Discover Your Who. And we have a book that recently was just released, and it's doing very well. And I work with leaders and groups and communities whereby I can help really have the awareness of some of the things I went through, so other leaders, companies don't necessarily have to go through the pain, I hope, and to be able to impart tools that I've found to be very useful in our own growth, but also as leaders of our business and for the benefit of KPIs, our employees, and wellness. And so discoveryouwho.com is a website, and I got a book out right now, and I'm just about to deploy also a full platform for iOS and Android, be able to download an app for all of Discover You Who, and what I call a blueprint for success for workplace culture. And super excited to be doing that.
Absolutely phenomenal. Discover your who. His name is John Stix. I'm sure that we're going to get tons of comments and feedback from this episode. Super valuable. Just wanted to say, too, I know that you are the overflow person, but every time you talk to me about that, every time I hear people talking about that, I always think to myself, like, I love the concept, but you know what? We are just conditioned as human beings that overflow is bad. Like, you don't want your toilet to overflow.
You don't want your
That's a
sink to
situation.
overflow.
You don't
Yeah.
ever, and even to like, you don't fill cups. Like, if I was going to hand you a Guinness, you don't fill it all the way to the top,
Although when
right?
people do, you say, "Oh, look at that pour."
Well, if it's a Guinness, yes, but if it was just some other drink,
Just saying.
it's not cool. A martini, it's not cool to bring it all the way to the tippy top. But listen, in
Yeah.
life, in energy, in finance, in abundance, in love, overflow is a great thing, and it's really hard to wrap our minds around that. Like you were saying, is the cup half full? Is it half empty, or is it full? But needs to be constantly overflowing. We have to train ourselves. We have to be okay with overflow, because that's the overflow is the excess that we're able to give away,
Right.
and regardless of what it is. And I love these concepts, John. I want to thank you, Lacey, and I thank you for taking your time to share with us. But we're just here watching along with everybody else. So thank you for sharing your passion, your heart, all of these life experiences and lessons
Amazing.
with everybody in the audience. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
So grateful to have been here, and what a great podcast. And I'm grateful for you guys and your entire audience. So I consider it a blessing. Thank you so much.
Well, thank
You're
you.
very welcome. And thank you, all of you that are watching, all of you that listen every single week. We love your feedback. I get lots of messages, because these podcasts oftentimes air after we've taped them. And I'm like, wait, who are you talking about again? And they goes, oh, John Stix. Oh, yeah, he was amazing. So send us your feedback. We love the messages. We love to hear from you guys.
We love to know how you're impacted.
And we super appreciate you taking time out of your week to spend it with Lacey and I and John. All right, everybody, we're going to try and top this episode next week. Not sure how we're going to do it, but we'll give it a run. We'll be back again next week with a brand new edition of the None of Your Business podcast.